27 years in the construction industry, and how can somebody look this good, right? You think after 27? Is that better? Yeah, that's much louder, okay. But anyhow, it's an interesting field, and we see a lot of things going on, a lot of differences and stuff. These two companies have always been looking at something new and trying to find something different to do. And that's basically what we're talking about today. Access into the work zone is always a problem. It's always been a problem, and it probably always will. We got to try something new to improve it. This right here, your typical project, this is what you see out there all the time. You see miles and miles of brake lights that are going on all over everywhere. I don't know if you saw on CNN a couple Mondays ago, Interstate 85, not far from where this was right there, had a 29-mile backup. They went from pretty much near Charlotte to all the way to Spartanburg. I mean, it was a terrible situation. One accident happens, backs everything else up. And that's what this is all about. Miles of brake lights. And unfortunately, you take this right here, you got to get all your equipment from here over to there. That's the only problem we got to deal with. And it causes a considerable amount of problems, of course. This is the road that we're talking about, really, Interstate 77, what we're going to be talking about mostly. And on this road right here, you see it's nothing unusual for a construction zone. All the work is being built on the inside. And we got to get trucks and equipment in there. You got to get your employees in there is an issue also. Everything that has to go from one side to the other is always going to be a problem. This right here is 77, and here's the culprit right here, getting the trucks inside the work zone. Now, everyone has seen this where you get people plowing in the back of other people, and statistically, if you look at this, the third most common accident that takes place is rear-ending. So when a rear-end accident takes place like this, it's going to back everything up. And it's going to keep you from getting your work done. It's going to stop your job. It's going to stop everything. Distracted drivers are going to be out there on this section of road. Every section of road that's being built or not built in the United States, every mile of interstate is going to have a certain number of accidents. Unfortunately, when this accident takes place while you're doing the job, it's your problem. It's your problem for a lot of reasons. It's your problem because you can't get equipment, people, and material in there. You got problems from lawsuits. You got problems from people complaining. You got issues all over everywhere. Lawyers in Charlotte, you can't swing a cat without hitting a lawyer. Sorry, Brad, I don't mean to throw that in. But anyhow, this problem right here is kind of funny. I saw a statistic just recently. How many people in here have BlackBerries? About half the room. I read a statistic that said just recently that people use BlackBerries are just about as efficient as people that smoke pot. Can you believe that? Okay. While they're driving, yeah. Now, this guy, somebody could be driving along behind this person and they're going to run into the same kind of problem. So anyhow, some of the considerations. Communication with the trucks, both company and independent trucks. Now, a lot of things can be solved if you get your people together, meet with your people, talk to these people about how to make this turn, how to get into the work zone, how that's going to happen in a way, to give the motorist plenty of activity space where they're going to see the lanes are changing. But the problem you're having sometimes, you take your company trucks and you don't think about the independent haulers. And then sometimes you hire an independent hauler and they hire the work to someone else. So you got 2 or 3 tiers of people that are involved in trying to get into the work zone, and that's always going to be a problem. It's a very good practice anytime you got to do this stuff where if you have a pre-shift meeting where you're going to talk about all these things that's going on for the day. Training for all that enter the work zone. If anyone has to enter that work zone for any reason, they should be trained on how to do it. Your employees have to get in and out. You got lowboy drivers that have to bring equipment in and out. You got all kinds of problems, all kinds of ways that you can look on. Employee staging areas is a really big area to pick up. Make sure everyone's parked in the same place where everyone can get together at one time during the day. I've seen a lot of companies that make the staging area inside the work zone instead of outside. And that's always going to be a problem, because then you got employee parking to add to the problems that you've already got. Here's another problem you got. Once you get the trucks in there, then you got to get them out. This is a problem that, there's all different kinds of ways of dealing with it, but unfortunately, you see a lot of companies that are still hiring these truckers and paying them by the load, and they're taking unnecessary chances getting out of the work zone. And when they do that, accidents happen, and then the new trucks can't get into the work zone. This is just a typical opening in a barrier wall that was on Interstate 77. What we're seeing on a lot of them, a lot of companies are using this area right near the access area to park their equipment. You see people parking their cars right at the opening in the barrier wall, so when people pull off, the truck has to avoid it. They have to, it's like an obstacle course. As soon as they pull off of the work zone, you see them parking equipment there. You see people standing around. And I saw something that was most unusual just recently on a job in Georgia, where someone had actually put the porta-johns right at the opening in the barrier wall. Now you think about that, a truck pulling off there, and he has to avoid hitting a piece of equipment, and the only thing to hit is the porta-john. So there shouldn't be anything around this area. When a truck has to exit the work zone, they have to pull off, and they're traveling at a speed of 45, 55, 65 or more, they have to have a clear area to pull off into. That, just like we were showing before, when you have a problem where you have to get trucks into the work zone where there is a ramp where they have to cross 3 or 4 lanes of traffic over, that's going to be a problem in situations like this. No one really likes the people that are building the road. They're probably the most unpopular people in the city, and they're not the most courteous drivers in the world to let an asphalt truck in front of them. So people don't typically let them over, and a lot of times if someone has to get off a ramp and then they have to move 4 lanes over to get into the opening of the barrier wall, they're going to take unnecessary chances. They're going to take risks that don't need to be taken. And we see that a lot. And when these accidents happen, you might think they're not your trucks, and they may not be your trucks, but everything that takes place on this job here is yours. Every accident that takes place on here, you got a high potential of being sued over. And it doesn't make any difference if it's not your truck. You still have an obligation to make it as safe as you possibly can for the people that have to enter it. Some considerations on this, of course, the EMS people, ambulance, fire engines, things like that. What happens if you got a problem on your work zone and an ambulance has to get in there and they miss the opening in the barrier wall? How far do they have to go around to get to the next opening or next ramp where they got to make a full turn? They got to go back in the other lane, head down, get on the ramp, come back around. They got a good possibility of getting there an hour later. And if you have a need for emergency people, that's a problem. You can very easily get with these emergency people and talk to them, tell them where the openings and the barrier walls are, and spend some time with them to make sure that they're up to speed if that situation does come up. This something on the local broadcasting possibilities is kind of interesting. On that particular job right there, we had a couple people that worked on it that kind of like to talk to the news. And when you have a job of that size that backs up traffic every day, and I don't care what city you're from, there's always going to be problems. When it's backed up like that, your job is news. Your job is what everyone's interested in. Your job is the road that's causing the problems for everyone's making everyone late at all those buildings on the other side of town. And there's also situations where they're trying to find alternatives for it. What you can find is these broadcast people, they're looking for someone to get on there in the morning and tell them what's going on. And, it's very easy to do. It has an effect on people also. Sometimes superintendents particularly, when they get on the news, pretty often they get a pretty swollen head, about this thing. But the news people likes to talk to them. Web page information, something reasonably new. We're seeing a lot of people get on there and set up a web page to alert people about what's going on for the day, what work is being done around what ramp and things like that, to let people know what's happening. And the newspaper is always going to be around. They're always somebody that's interested in it. Typically, I'd say the media are not going to be your friends when it comes to a work site, but in some cases they can be used to your benefit. Involve police. The police are there 24 hours a day, even if you're not. And you don't know what's going to happen after you've left the job, but they do. If you take your opportunities to meet with these people, talk with them about what their ideas are on your job, what they think that could be done differently, you might find that they'll be able to help you. And getting them on your side is a tremendous benefit. I know we've gone as far as to give them cameras. In some cases, they've taken pictures of accidents that we didn't know even took place. That's really valuable to have. Unfortunately, what police usually have to do is set up radar and things like that to help cut back on the speeders. I know on this particular job we're talking about here, we had our share of problems and our share of fatalities and from this section of road. And the police actually on that one, after the problems took place, which would have been nice if we could get them before, they actually gave us, the only thing I call them was fake police cars, where they had the blue lights on them, and they let our employees move them around to where the work was going on. You can do that if you work with them, but unfortunately they're not that open to do things in budget cuts. On one particular job like this, I went to the police to talk to them and told them that someone's going to get killed if we don't do something differently out there. And unfortunately, it happened the next day that someone did get killed. And it's a bad situation. And if you work with these people in advance, hopefully those kind of problems don't take place. But if you collect the police reports, you can go by the police station and find out what happened on your job when you're not there. You are responsible for it. Anything that takes place when you put up that begin construction, end construction, you're on the hook for everything in the middle. So you better know what's going on. It's not a good time to find out when you get some paperwork from a lawyer that's going to tell you you're being sued over something that took place on your job site. So it's a good idea, whether you use safety people to go by and go get with your police and collect all these reports is a good idea. Accident investigations I found are very valuable because they show you where your problems are also. And when you get them involved, you get up there, you find out that there may be something more to the job than you're not seeing. I mean, it may be something about that particular area, maybe it's a curve or something like that, that may bring about some change that may need to be done. Plan for emergency repair is a huge issue. And I don't know how many people do that, but when accidents take place, particularly around these access and egress things, we're dealing with a lot of truckers and stuff like that. When they hit those barrier walls, it's a mess. And more often than not, the construction people that are out there are the ones that have to fix it. And you can make quite a bit of money on that too, fixing these things. Resetting the barrier walls, you need to use grade-alls, you need to use loaders, and you need to keep track of how many employees you're using out there. And that can all be billed to the persons that had the accident's insurance company. If you get it off the police report and how you go about processing it, there's all kinds of ways to do that. But a lot of companies don't do it, and they just eat the cost of that. And that's something that there's hundreds of thousands of dollars on any job where you can collect some money on that. Have video equipment and photo equipment around to take pictures of these kind of things is always good also. Internal traffic control plans is something that so many people have been working on for so long. Dave Fosbrook here from NIOSH, we've been talking about that for years. How to set up the traffic control on your jobs, not off the job, but when you're on the job. Where things are parked is huge. Protection for hidden dangers such as catch basins or open holes. That's big for a trucker or your employees or anyone that's going to be swerving off of there and they got to get into that work zone. Any kind of excavation or pipe work and stuff like that, obviously that opening in the barrier wall shouldn't be used if it's too close to it. But we've seen a lot of them where they have. And of course the fourth one It's probably one of the big ones here. You know, watch for inspectors as well as employees. You know, inspectors don't like to walk any farther than they have to, so they're going to park their truck right where they can. And believe it or not, we have more inspectors' vehicles hit than our own, because they usually like to park pretty close to the things. This right here, I took a picture of this on a job that I saw where we were doing the overlay for someone else's project. And what you see right there, those are open holes for catch basins, right at the opening in the barrier wall. So there's also an impalement hazard, obviously. So when you're driving a truck and you're going to exit into that barrier wall opening at 45 miles per hour and you got to deal with something like that, you create an obstacle course that's almost, it's got its own dangers associated with it that are even worse. Considerations of lighting the access area. Make sure that everyone can see where it is. Everyone should know where it is. There should be some discussion about how far it is that they need to be, the traffic needs to be before they pull out if they have to exit through those openings like that. You know, there's a problem that we've got also when the lane looks clear, 2 lanes over, that it looks clear, but it may not be because someone's going to be changing lanes. And that does create a problem also. It's happened quite a few times, but this thing about the truck inspections, the subcontractors, anybody ever here hired a trucker that you think were not quite up to speed on what they should be as far as their equipment? Maybe not quite up to speed, probably almost there, but anyhow, if you get your safety people out there, look at these trucks, look at them from the standpoint of what kind of condition they're in, from the tires, turn signals. You got to look at your flashers if they're good enough to get in there. You know, a lot of them are just going to use their regular flashers before they enter that work zone. And half the time their flashers are covered with asphalt. You can't even see them. Some of them put beacon lights on top of the truck, but the vehicles directly behind them can't even see that. So, you know, looking at your trucks that are entering your work zones can eliminate a lot of your liability as well. You know, consider the driving capability. Now, you know, everyone knows what trucking company is good and which one's not. And, you know, sometimes you got to look at them and consider that. The certificate of insurance, of course, good case to, you know, get that on file for every truck you got going on in your job. And it's more so than, you know, just getting it from the company that you're hiring. If they sub it out to another company, those guys are still on your job. So that's something to check also. Check to see if they're safe. Look at the safe stats. You know, you can find out a lot about a trucking company by that kind of stuff, and you look out, see how many out of services they got, how many times they're getting pulled over, what their ratings like. I really don't know how some of these trucking companies are even staying on the road. I don't have the slightest idea. You know, when you look at the safe stats and you get up to 75, they're supposed to trigger you know, the state to come in there and pull their DOT records. But from the ones we've seen, I don't know how they couldn't be over 100. But there's some pretty bad situations out there. Now this right here, when you start talking about truckers, this is right by the opening in the barrier wall also. And of course you can probably well guess that none of the truckers said they hit that. It just must have bent down like that by accident or something like that. But the funny thing about that particular situation, the DOT, and I got the records from them, we found out which truck it was that did it. But he appeared the next day with that same number on his truck, but it was completely painted, a different color, brand new looking truck. So the owner of the truck knew this happened. The owner of that company knew his driver took out one of these overhead signs and he intentionally hid that. And, you know, when I found out from the police department, they said he was wanted for a couple other warrants also. And when we went by his house to find out where the truck was, we found a hood of one of our trucks in his front yard that he stole. So, you know, trucking companies are, I don't want to rag on truckers, but, you know, there's something to think about on every one of your situations. This cost a fortune and no one would admit to it. And it had to be fixed. Here's something also that is something that really you need to give some thought to, is that you got your deal with your people, but your subs that may be on there, maybe when you're not there, like this electric company. He's got to go out there. Have you talked to him about how he's going to enter and exit through the work zone? Is he capable of doing what he's supposed to do? This is a good company. It's a good truck, but, you know, they're not all that good. So that's something that, you know, bears some thought every time you got to get one on there. Oh, by the way, this guy that had this accident right here, I found out a short while after this that he ended up in the hospital over a bad accident he had. Turns out his trucks were in such bad shape, the gas gauge didn't work, the fuel gauge didn't work on this thing. And he was at a rest stop and he wanted to check his fuel level by a cigarette lighter. The truck burned up completely. So, you know, you see these kind of things happen. Consideration on this is a pre-shift meeting. You know, get together with all your people, pull them all together, let everyone know what everyone else is doing. And that way it's going to be the safest one possible. But it's not that hard to do at the beginning of the day. And typically everyone's there. But every now and then something comes up where someone misses the thing. Now, this took place over here. It's an interesting picture. It's pretty old, but the same things are happening. They had a pre-shift meeting with all the people that were going to be working on there, but one employee showed up a half an hour late. So he figured he'd get out to the work zone by his bicycle. So he attempted, he was not going to go to the opening of the barrier wall. He was going to ride his bicycle across Interstate 85 at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he thought he would just be able to throw his bicycle over on the other side. So he wasn't going to use the opening in the barrier wall. He was just going to make his own way over there. This has to be thought about also. He died in that accident, and you can see the state police are moving the bicycle away, what's left of it. Here's something this is a barrier wall and opening up there around this area right there that's coned off. If they're not being used, they should be closed off. They should be made safe for anyone that's going to be trying to get on your work zone. There's a lot of people that could want to be there for reasons that they shouldn't be. Just recently in Charlotte, I saw that one of these jobs, somebody got in there and pulled all the copper wire out of the conduit for recycling. When they went to turn lights on, obviously they wouldn't work. So people that were getting into that work zone, they shouldn't have been there. There's other things, other people that shouldn't be on there also. Kids get on there. One of the jobs I recently saw, it went out there and one of our trucks was stolen, and I went out there to find the location of it. And the funny thing about it was there was a van parked there that wasn't supposed to be there from a church. And when we looked at it a little closer, we found the ignition was ripped out. So what they did was they drove that truck till it was just about to run out of gas, found an opening in a barrier wall, went in, parked that truck, and stole one of ours. And you know, it happens when you let these people on your job sites. You know, you don't have anything to gain from it. But they should be protected. Kids are taking these three-wheelers back there. You know, it's getting to the point where, you know, construction's going on everywhere, and that's the only place they've got to ride these things. And if it's on your job, you know, you got a serious problem. So these openings in the barrier walls are the way in. And a lot of times the parents are involved in this also. The parents will put these four-wheelers on a trailer, drive that thing right back into your job site and let their kid run loose in there. And of course, when the kid gets injured, happened to you before? Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, those things are, you know, they're getting more and more dangerous. I know we got sued over a $9 million lawsuit where a guy wiped out on one and had severe injuries. And we were responsible for it, of course. But these things are huge. There's a lot of things that you can do. You know, on these barrier walls, you know, they need to be closed off. And, you know, when openings are not being used, they should be closed. Watch for the vehicles. Now, this is something that's kind of funny also. The news people. Anyone ever had news people pull up on your job site and to set up a boom where they're going to do a broadcast from your job site where they kind of neglected to mention it to you? Well, if they have an accident while they're out there, who's going to be on the hook for that? So they're there also. Channelization devices be checked regularly, make sure they're clean and in the right location. You know, these things need to be looked at all the time because, you know, all kinds of things are taking place.